Well, George, congratulations on the film. I think the last time we spoke was actually at the start of the year, about 1917, which of course sounds an eternity ago with everything that's happened. So, what
Yeah.
have you been doing over the past 6 or 7 months?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It feels kind of like another year in itself, a different sort of time. Well, obviously the kind of first few months of the year was all kind of 1917 and a bit of true history of the Kelly Gang, and then lockdown. I was with my family for lockdown, and then just sort of just the other side of that. I've just finished doing a film called Wolf in Ireland, that's written and directed by Natalie Biancheri. And so I've just finished that, and I'm now working on another project at the minute. So sort of, it seems like the kind of works, everyone's trying to get back up and running there now, it feels.
So, you've actually been filming during COVID.
Yeah. We started, I mean, this project, Wolf, we had our first week's rehearsal the week before the lockdown was called. And then obviously that shut everything down. But we came back up in at the end of July and filmed through to September. No, sorry, August through to October.
So, what
Um,
sort of limitations or restrictions were placed on you in terms of filming? I mean, it must have given you, as an actor, and indeed the whole crew, some real challenges to work with.
yeah, I mean, it's different for every production, but the way that we worked it was obviously, social distancing and wearing masks is so important. But then for the nature of the story and filming the scenes, we had to be able to have close contact um, and not to think about that. And so to get around that, we were tested regularly, and there was the cast and the key members of the crew in terms of proximity to the cast all bubbled in a hotel. And we didn't leave the hotel unless we were going to work, basically. And we were lucky enough to have some outside space, but otherwise we sort of locked down in the hotel, other than when we were on set. And then on set there was everyone was socially distant, and there was masks and ventilating the room every hour. So yeah, I mean, Jesse Fisk, our producer, did the most amazing job in kind of creating this way of working, so to speak, over lockdown, because we were due to start production as it happened, and she spent that time getting all these kind of measures in place, and we came through the whole shoot without a single case. So it's down to, I'd say, like Jesse and Jane and their team who got us through it.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Now, with nuclear and indeed with 1917, they're both listed as being in the same year. So, which one did you do first, nuclear or 1917?
It was nuclear.
It
It was
was
not.
nuclear.
Yeah. So it was actually I think they've come out at the same time. It was actually the year before that I shot nuclear,
Okay.
and it was just before. It's funny how the sort of chronology of everything goes. It was just before I was going off to shoot the true history of the Kelly Gang, which had I'd gone out to prepare. Then the finances fell apart, so I came home and was at home for a while, managed to do nuclear, and then went back to sort of start again on the Kelly Gang. And then when I came back from the Kelly Gang, I did 1917, and then they've all come out the other way around. So it's kind of, you know, it's funny the nature of it, but it
It's
was a
all back to
really,
front, really, isn't it?
yeah, it's all back to front, but they all kind of inform each other in different ways. And I think that in a way, like the character of Boy and his kind of wild nature, I'd gone out to Australia to begin preparing for the Kelly Gang, and there was a real physicality to that piece. And Justin wanted that sort of all of us to sort of be a bit wild, and also to be kind of very in touch with our physicality, and that really played into when that sort of fell apart. I was very much in that sort of head and body space to then kind of, so when the role of Boy came about, I was kind of, I felt like I kind of knew him perhaps in a way that I wouldn't have had I not had the experience of beginning to prep for Ned.
So, what else was the appeal of nuclear, both in terms of the film and indeed the role as well?
I think Catherine and David's script, I think it's such a beautifully sparse script, but within that kind of sparseness, there is so much room for possibility and interpretation, and that, for people when they see the film, you understand by the end of it there's this constant double level of kind of what you're watching. And I sort of felt that as I read it, and then obviously when that's kind of shown to you in where the way the story unfolds, I thought that was such a beautiful turn of events. And and it kind of, in the playing of it, it really, I find that double level fascinating, the kind of the very real situation coupled with the sort of whatever the spiritual or kind of metaphorical level of what that conversation is about. And are you talking about what you're talking about in that room, or are you talking about bigger things? Or do you know that you're talking about those bigger things if you are talking about that, or is that just the cleverness of the dialogue? And how do you best serve that? Is it best if you know that, or is it best if you don't? And I thought that was all sort of within Catherine's script, and I just really wanted to be a part of it.
And it's a much smaller film. I mean, certainly an awful lot smaller than 1917, but also smaller than Kelly Gang as well. I wondered if the fact that it was small was actually part of the appeal, or do you prefer to be in something bigger?
To like, genuinely, there's no sort of the scale of the kind of the budget has no it doesn't sort of affect my decision making. I think it's the story and what the team are attempting to do and to explore, and also kind of where that comes in your own life. You know, you have different interests and sort of you know, kind of creative wants at different points in your life, as you kind of see the world differently, see yourself differently, and all that kind of stuff. And so the size of the production never really has a bearing on anything for me. It was just the script and the character and the sort of the artistic nature of the piece, I reckon.
And your co-star in the film is Emilia Jones, and in fact, all of your scenes in the film are with her. So I hope you got on well.
Yeah, we did. Like, Emilia is wonderful. Emilia was really amazing. I mean, I think she's absolutely stupendous in the film, but also just like she led us all, you know, because she's in every scene, and her enthusiasm for the project, the enthusiasm for her role within the entire team, as much for her role as a character, and how she performed every day in both as an actress and as herself, was just really inspiring. And she kind of, she led us all through, because also with the nature of it being a smaller production, the whole thing was filmed in 3 weeks, and it was fast and furious. It was go, which was really exciting. But you know, you have to have everyone being up for that, and that's sort of often dictated by your kind of, I'd say in one hand it is mutual, but there is something to be said about the kind of, I guess, the sort of being led by the sort of heads of department, and Emilia was kind of her head of department, so to speak, and she just did it so beautifully.
So you've said that it was filmed in just 3 weeks, so presumably you didn't have the luxury of any sort of rehearsals to build your on-screen relationship. You just had to jump in, really.
Yeah, we had like 2 days, and to kind of to mess around, and we sort of talked about the scenes and played the scenes together, and we were at a place just by Shepherd's Bush, and we were sort of outside which is the rooms where we were auditioning, and then there was this sort of staircase outside, and I remember like climbing all over this staircase, sort of using it as if it's the sort of jungle gym that he's got set up for him. So yeah, it was like, I don't know, but in a way, you know, in some ways you kind of would go, oh, I'd love to have time. There's never a right way of doing something. Like Wolf, we were blessed with 3 weeks rehearsal, and that was always a guaranteed part of the process. And that was amazing, because it's like a play and it deepens it so much. But then by the same token with Nuclear, when you have 1 day or 2 days, you know, like, right, let's be friends. Let's like, come on, let's just, no holds back. We've only got today. So let's give each other everything, which is a really exciting energy in itself as well.
You mentioned your character in the film, Boy. I mean, I guess that's his name, but he is actually something of an enigma, because he doesn't really have a name, and he asks an awful lot of questions, but he never answers very many questions. So yeah. I wondered if you sort of developed a backstory for him yourself that you were able to use.
It's tricky to talk about without kind of giving it away, but I think it's almost important that we don't land upon whether he is or he isn't, but I kind of thought he is what he is in the piece. But I also felt like he was almost a sort of angel, a kind of trapped angel. And because, as you say, he asks a lot of questions, but I think if anything, he's sort of facilitating her to try and figure out the answers in a way. He's provoking by asking questions of her, he's actually provoking her to question herself, is kind of what I thought about it. and that he's sort of doing that because that is who he is as a man and as a character, but that is also his role within the world of the story, is someone, and but then again, I don't even know if he knows that that's what his role is. He happens to be that person, and he's right for that place because he sort of facilitates, he sort of is the kind of the embodiment of what that place is, that sort of in between, and therefore I don't know whether he even knows that himself necessarily, but I think he kind of feels comfortable in the role that he provides, whether it's sort of he knows that he's doing it or not. But so without kind of giving away the story too much in talking about it, I think that he is both who he is, but he's also a sort of angel of that in between.
You mentioned earlier the sort of physicality that goes with the role, and in fact, the first time that we see you in the film, you're doing that backflip.
Yeah.
Off the bridge. Was that actually you?
It wasn't. I was stood on the edge, but I learned to do a backflip because I wanted to do that backflip. So I went to, that was my sort of main rehearsal. Before we had our rehearsal period, I then went to a gymnastics gym in East London and met someone in the gym who taught me how to backflip, and was kind of, I used to go there sort of every other day to work on my backflip. And then I never got to do it because of safety sort of measures on the day. But yeah, so I'd like to say I can backflip when there's foam to catch me. But I mean, but that's the thing, is I think that image of him is he stood on the edge. He stood in between life and death. And that's where he exists. And that's where you first see him. And that's, I think that, and again, the beauty of Catherine's script, it's things like that. When you kind of read over it again and again, it's so sparse and yet it's so deep, because you sort of, when you get to the end of a first reading, you then read it again and you see that first image and you go, oh wow, that speaks volumes. Just in a stage direction, you've said massive things about the possibility of this man's role within this world and who he is. And that's what I thought was really, I thought it was really beautiful.
And I think also when we first see him, I think we all make the same assumption that Emilia Jones makes as well, because of where he's standing and what could potentially happen. Yeah.
It's I like that there's a danger to him as well. I think there's a kind of, it's a dangerous world, the whole world of the story. I mean, I think even there's a sort of level of, there's a beautiful kind of innocence to their relationship and a playfulness and a sort of almost childlike quality. But then there's also you sort of watch them disappear into this wild things, this kind of young man and this young girl sort of walking off together, bit with him just on a sort of an open promise of, let me show you something. And you kind of like, what's going on here? You know, there's an edge to the film as well as a real kind of sensitivity and beauty. So I kind of liked that it has that double level, that it sort of verges on being really quite murky and then kind of something very beautiful. And it sort of holds that all the time.
So looking forward to Wolf, you're working with Paddy Considine and Lily Rose Depp. What else can you tell us about that? I gather it's something to do with the wolf being trapped inside a human body and the body happens to be yours.
Yes, yeah, it's a young man who feels that he is a wolf, and he's in a therapy center for people who identify as animals rather than people, and his kind of journey as to kind of wrestling with that, and all the other characters within that who are sort of wrestling with similar God, no, issues is the wrong word, but a similar kind of conundrum. And it was really, I mean, I can't really speak too much about it yet because also it's being sort of edited now, but it was a really beautifully kind of complex piece as to, you know, I think kind of there's of course lots of sort of, there's questions about, like, that in some ways that feel quite pertinent about the way of sort of, as all of us kind of will, identity as a whole is sort of being sort of re-examined, and there's a beautiful openness now, and it's sort of, I guess the film is just like, I don't know, so in some ways it feels quite current, but it's more about, I think, your sort of instincts of like kind of what's at the core of someone, and the when someone feels something so deeply in themselves, what kind of how how much to contradict that on the outside can that thing take? And that's sort of my character, and that's everyone's characters in it are wrestling with versions of that, both consciously and unconsciously, and yet it's expressed in sort of quite a strange way, in a way, because of some of the visuals of the piece, without going into it too much, are like, are pretty kind of out there, because you're sort of doing and feeling and embodying all of these things in a human form. So yeah, I think we had a really special time doing it. So I really hope that, it kind of reflects the specialness of the time we had making it.
Well, hopefully we'll get to see that next year sometime soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
And hopefully we'll get a chance to chat about that as well.
I hope so too. We'll make it 5.
Yeah, 5. Exactly. Make it 5.
Aye.
Been lovely to talk to you again, George. Thank you so much for your time.
And you, Frida.
Take care now. Thank you.